Greece has announced plans to reopen its holiday resorts as the threat from coronavirus begins to recede and to allow foreign holidaymakers to return from next month. Now, all across Europe, different countries whose economies depend on tourism are in a race against time to prove that it is safe to reopen before the summer. Portugal says it will allow some international visitors in from the 6th of June, but hotels won't let guests check into their rooms until 24 hours after the previous occupant has departed to allow for deep cleaning. France, on the other hand, hasn't said when its ban on foreign tourists will be lifted. The beaches are currently open to domestic visitors, but sunbathing is banned. Cyprus plans to allow visitors from some countries starting mid-June, but not actually from the UK or from Russia, which just happen to be its two biggest markets. Tourists might have to disinfect their luggage when they arrive. Holiday season will begin in Greece on the 15th of June, when most international flights start 2 weeks later. The Prime Minister announced the move in a televised address.
Στους επισκέπτες μας θα γίνονται δειγματοληπτικά τεστ.
Sample coronavirus testing will be conducted to our visitors and our general health protocols will be adhered. Without them, however, overshadowing our bright sun or the natural beauties of Greece. Our weapon is the passport of security, reliability and health that our country has won.
Well, let's move from Greece to Italy, which is hoping to open up to foreign tourists in just 2 weeks' time. Despite being the first European country to impose a nationwide lockdown, things there are starting to return to normal. Mark Leoni reports from Lake Como.
Perfection isn't shared, at least not for now. The jewel of Lake Como glitters in the stillness. But Italy hopes to lure tourists back from 2 weeks today, when it lifts restrictions to visitors from Europe and drops its quarantine. The tranquility is breathtaking, but the economy is starved. Lake Como was set for a record year, George Clooney's villa here helping to pull tourists. But then the virus hit this region, Lombardy, the hardest in Italy.
Sport, of amusement.
Tourism councillor Luca Leoni has watched as all bookings until August have been cancelled here. Now they're planning to extend the season to try to save it. That means he'll keep his hotel open right through until January, hoping the rooms fill up as confidence returns.
So the British tourists are the first they arrived on Lake Como at the end of the 18th century. So we are now ready to welcome them again, like we always been in the past. And for us, it's not a question of working with them, but it's to share our feeling with them, our soul, our heart with them, because they started the tourists for us and we want them to be back, so as soon as possible.
Local businesses need them badly. Italy is expecting a recession this year of almost 10%.
Having imposed a national lockdown before any other country, Italy is now unlocking fast, bringing forward the lifting of some measures, desperate to salvage its tourism season and the economy. But the balance between welcoming visitors back here and the risk of a second wave is what Italy and every other country is now trying to strike.
At the local market, restarting today, there's little to keep them busy. Traders want the custom back, but not the possible side effect.
I don't think the tourists will come back quickly. They and we are scared that the infections rise again.
The Italian government is making a mistake. We here in the north were worst affected by the virus. The south wasn't. So why not open there first, where they're not afraid?
Lake Como exceeds anything I ever beheld in beauty, wrote Shelley. This place is poetry, but it wants an audience. Mark Lowen, BBC News, Lake Como.
Yes, it's certainly stunning. Now, it is entirely possible that the countries that open up early will attract the most visitors. But Germany's foreign minister had this warning on Monday for anyone hoping to steal a march on the competition.
Many countries in Europe depend on summer tourism, especially German tourists, and it is quite understandable that many countries wish for quick bilateral solutions. But this would not go with the European spirit to which we are committed. We don't want a European bidding competition for tourists.
Well, tourism ministers around Europe had a virtual conference today to discuss how to coordinate getting summer back on track. Here's Gavin Lee.
Well, this was the second big meeting between ministers to work out how to open up countries to tourism again, not just for the right to have a holiday, but for 12 million people across the EU to get their jobs back involved in the tourism sector again. About 6 million are said to be at risk because of the pandemic. And there's already a roadmap in place, a way to open up the borders, starting with cross-border workers being able to go from country to country, then neighbouring countries being able to open up to each other. We've seen that in the Baltic states already, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, last week opening up to each other, and then across Europe, internal borders reopening in the summer. So what do we have today? I think the takeaway is there's no master plan in place. Different countries will have different strategies when it comes to, say, hotel rules or beach etiquette. We know in Santorini, for example, in the past few days, they've organised for plexiglass screens on sun loungers 4 metres apart to distance people on the beaches. In Portugal, Croatia, Spain, they're looking at the same thing. You've also got different rules for hotels, and what you and I will get is an interactive guide which is being worked on now at EU level. So we can look at any country and decide, shall we go there on holiday? What is the government doing? What are the hotels doing as well? So that should be developed in the next few weeks.
Well, thanks to Gavin there. Well, let's turn to Spain now, where the government has won a vote in Parliament to extend the state of emergency for another 2 weeks. The government says the measure is necessary to maintain control as coronavirus restrictions are gradually relaxed. Spain has had one of the world's strictest lockdowns, including an order that all children remain in their homes for 6 weeks. This sound has been heard daily in Madrid and in other cities in the past days. Protesters angry with the government's handling of this epidemic. Some of the demonstrations have been against the lockdown, which right-wing parties have denounced as a brutal confinement. Now, the government, however, isn't backing down. In fact, as well as extending the lockdown for the 5th time, it's also ordered all citizens to wear face masks in public. And this applies to everyone over the age of 6, where social distancing of 2 metres is impossible. Here's Guy Heiko.
Certainly, we're seeing a lot more people wearing masks now than we were even 2 or 3 weeks ago. It's a very common sight. They've become much more available at pharmacies and supermarkets. And people seem to want to wear them, I think, for their own safety. So I think the fact they're being told that they have to, certainly in most circumstances, this will apply to cities and larger towns, I think, rather than rural areas. I think the fact that this new regulation is coming into place won't come as a huge shock or a massive change necessarily, because most people, or a good number of people you see out in the street, are already wearing face masks.